Good afternoon and welcome to the latest part of my series of videos of building the DJH A8 kit. If you remember, the last time I left you with some doubt about the layout of the lubrication pipes on the right hand side of the locomotive. Well, I've been away, I've done my research and I've found quite a high quality picture on the internet, although it wasn't of my particular locomotive, and it was also of a locomotive with the alternative diagram 63C or D boiler, which is different to the one that I'm making. However, after looking at it, I can't really find any right hand side pictures of locomotives that have got the correct boiler for my prototype, so I've decided to go with what appears to be the layout on this particular locomotive. It's the correct period, so in the absence of anything other suitable that I can actually see, I've decided to go with this. So the photograph, as I mentioned, was a very high quality photograph, and I had an attempt at enlarging and printing out the area that I wanted to see. Well, when I printed it out, it didn't come out very well, and it's quite hard to see, but it is quite plainly evident that the atomizer, which is the tiny casting, which is by my finger, which I've already moved, is in a corresponding position to the one on the other side, which is evident from my prototype photo, and it is not in the place that the instructions tell you to put it, which is at the front, on the front framing, sort of just roughly where my finger is. So I tried getting a better quality photograph, and I ended up taking a photograph of the photograph. It actually looks quite good. Looking at the screen on my camera, it does look quite good, but when you look at it closely, it's covered in scan lines from the screen that I was taking the photograph of. But I've been able to study the photograph closely enough, and it's quite clear that the pipework on the right hand side of the locomotive in the period that I'm building it is the same as the pipework on the left hand side of the locomotive, which I've got a good shot of. So as I mentioned, I've a great lot of heartache having dropped the casting, which is about 1mm by 3mm, on the floor twice and found it. If you make a similar discovery, please make sure that you don't lose the casting. There are no spares in the kit, and you would have to apply to DJH for a replacement should you lose it. So I've moved the casting to its correct place, and I'm going to go away in a minute and I'm going to add the pipework from wire like I did from the other side, and then I'll show you what I've done. Just before I go away and do that, I also need to just mention about the bunker. When I signed off the last time with the bunker, I didn't mention that the instructions suggest that you use some 0.7mm wire, of which there's quite a reasonable amount in the kit, to strengthen the last bar on the, if you're using building a cage or the hopper bunker, you strengthen the last bar of the cage where the bunker meets the cab. It's quite evident that it does need this because it is quite delicate. So while I was doing the moving of the casting, I fitted 2 lengths of 0.7mm wire on the inside of the last bar where it meets the cap. I've made sure that the wire doesn't overhang the end of the bar. So if you do it like that, then the bunker, it's quite a snug fit with the rear of the bunker on the locomotive. So make sure that when you add the wire, it is set back slightly, and then the bunker will continue to fit well. So I'm going to go away now. I'm going to fit the pipework that is required for the steam atomizer that we've moved, or that I've moved, and then I'll come back and show you what I've done, and then what we'll do is we'll move on and we'll add some more bits that are on this page 9 of the instructions. There are steps, there are various castings that we haven't fitted yet, and there is the buffers, which I will give you a bit of a rundown about the buffers, because there are a number of choices with the buffers which are included in the kit. So I'm going to go away and do that, and I'll show you how I get on. Okay, as I said, I've been away and I have done the pipe work on the right hand side of the locomotive. I'll move a bit closer, you may be able to see that I've really just duplicated what was on the left hand side. Before I move on from this very fiddly task, which not detailed in the instructions as I mentioned some time ago, but is quite plainly evident in photographs that you see of A8 classes around this period. I've got to tell you about the wire that I used. So as I mentioned, I've got a huge supply of this Kynar wire as it was described. It was used for making computer backplanes back in the days when I started out as a computer engineer, where a processor consisted of 25 boards or more, about the size of an A3 sheet of paper with discrete logic on, and to connect them all together they had a backplane that they plugged into, and all the individual connections were connected up with wire like this for data purposes, obviously not for power but for data purposes. I have a 1 kilometre reel of this, and I've got probably about 750 yards left on it. So that's the wire with the insulation on. It's the same wire I use for making my lamps, which you may have seen in other videos. But when you strip the wire out, you get some quite nice tinned copper wire, which is 0.1 of a millimetre in diameter. Now, if you've been looking to try and buy this, you probably won't find any descriptions on the internet with Kynar wire, because it's not used for that purpose anymore. But what you want to look for is insulated wire 30 AWG. That's insulated wire 30 AWG, and then that is basically the modern version of what this is. So that's what I've used to do the pipe work. 0.5, 0.4 brass wire is too big and too difficult to sort of manipulate, and really when you look at photographs of the oil lubrication installations on the A8s, the pipe work is not a nice smooth runs of pipe work. It goes all over the place. So that's what I've used. I think I've got a pretty decent, so that's the left hand side of the locomotive, and that's the right hand side of the locomotive, and I think that that's pretty good. So now, having completed that admittedly fiddly task, as I mentioned before, we're going to go away, and now we're going to fit some parts which are a lot more easier to fit. So what we're going to do, we are going to just have a quick look and see what we've neglected to fit. Right, I'm going to leave the sandbox tops off for the moment, because they're going to be quite difficult to solder, and I'll probably Well, in fact, I will definitely use super glue to fit those when I'm finished. Now, you don't want to, if you can at all help it, fit parts with super glue while you are still soldering other parts. Otherwise, you tend to be gassed out by something which is more akin to tear gas, as super glue breaks down by heat. So I'm going to leave any part that I am going to that I'm likely to super glue, I will leave that off for the moment. The tops of the sandboxes aren't necessary to continue on. So what we're going to do, we're going to try and complete page 9 as far as we can go, minus the tops of the tops of the sandboxes. So we're going to fit the 4 rear lamp irons, we're going to fit the 3 front lamp irons, which are all etched parts. We're going to fit the cab steps. We're going to fit a few castings, the tank vents, which are white metal castings. There is another casting there which I'm not sure what it is, but we'll fit that, and we will also fit the fire iron bracket, which is a lost wax casting. And when I've done that, I will talk to you about fitting the buffer stocks and what choices are available to you within that. There are a number of variations within the kit, and again, much the same as everything else is with this particular locomotive. Things were changed, and there are quite a few variations that you can have, but I will talk about those a bit later. So I'm going to get on and start doing those bits. If I run across any problems with doing them, I'll let you know. They should be quite straightforward, and then I'll show you what I've done. I've been away, I've fitted a number of castings, both white metal and brass. I've fitted 4 lamp irons on the rear of the locomotive, which you may be able to see. 3 at the bottom, 1 at the top, the one at the top on a bracket. I found the holes will need to be widened to probably 0.85 or 0.9 millimeters. Just be careful with the 2 lamp irons on the end, because they coincide with the buffers, and if you fitted the buffers you probably won't be able to fit the 2 lamp irons on either side. The same doesn't apply to the front, but I fitted the 3 lamp irons at the front, and I've left the pegs. So be careful when you do this. When you cut the pegs off, they will need smoothing off to a nice smooth finish, so you can't see anything below, especially on the rear of the bunker. I've fitted the 2 white metal castings for the tank vents. I've also fitted the trident shaped casting at the front. This is a bit strange. It doesn't sit vertical, it needs to lean forward slightly, so it needs to lean forward towards the front of the tank. It is cast that way, so please don't be tempted to actually straighten it out. It is supposed to lean, and then there's another casting here just next to, which you may be able to see. It's a brass casting, and that is also to do with retaining the fire irons, which the fireman puts out the window basically, and they sit on top of the tank. The other thing that I've done is I have fitted one of the steps. Now I've fitted one of the steps. I've fitted the step on this side. Unusually they are referred to by letters, so they're A and B, A1, B1, and A2, B2, and the parts that you have a small part which is the footstep, and you have another part which of course I've put down and I can't find. which is also quite a complex fold. It needs to be folded in a number of directions. You have to fold the steps up, you have to fold the top over, and the side out. Now on the vertical side, if I show you on the one that I've already fitted, can you see it's sort of L-shaped? Well, on this edge here there are 2 rows of rivets that you can press out, which you are supposed to press out for rivet detail on the inside of the steps. Now, as I mentioned right at the start of all this, my rivet press isn't good enough, so what I've done is I have drilled the holes out 0.5mm, and I've used 0.5mm brass rivets for the 4 holes. The other thing that I will say is, if you go down my avenue like I've done and use brass rivets, the steps on the inside where the angle piece is more than likely won't fit, so it is necessary to slightly trim the inside of the step treads, the bits where they go up on either side, otherwise they won't fit. So my advice with this is just to keep trying, do dry runs before you get round to fitting it. Just keep trying. All the folds are on, all the etch marks are on the inside of the folds. Where the material is thick, there are faint folds on the rear of the parts to assist you with doing your folds. There is another part that you will need to fit, which is marked down as, just let me check on this. Right, there are two parts that you will need to fit, which are marked on the instructions. That's these parts over here. These are on the steps. All the parts for the steps are actually on the chassis etching, so they're nickel silver. They're quite chunky etchings, but they are quite easy to fold. The one piece of advice I will have, when you fit, sorry about the sun, when you fit this part, which is marked down as E6 times 2, make sure you fit it to the steps before you fit the steps to the locomotive. Otherwise it is extremely difficult to actually fit them after you've fitted the steps. But fitting the steps is easy, because you can see on the rear of the locomotive there are 2 half etched lines, and they mark where the steps go. So I'm going to go away, I'll go and do the second set of steps, but I won't come back to you, and this will be the end of this particular segment of building the A8. I hope you've enjoyed watching it, and when we come back, I will have fitted the buffers. Sorry, before I go, I've got to talk to you about the buffers. The buffers, there are a number of variations. You can have straight shanked with round buffers or with oval shaped buffers. You can have group standard shanks, which are, these are some brass ones that I have, but they're sort of flared at the top. All the castings for the buffer shank, the buffer housings in the kit are white metal. These are a couple of brass ones that I've got lying around off an N2, and they can also be with oval and with round buffers. So you need to be you need to have made up your mind at the start which what form your buffers are going to be. Mine are going to be group standard with round buffers, because that is what is on my locomotive. So they're round buffers with group standard buffer housings, and I'm going to fit those ready for the next time I come back. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and the next time we come back we are going to move on to actually page 10 of the instructions, which is more to do with fitting the boiler and again finishing off more castings, and then once that's done there isn't really a huge amount to do. There's the cab and the cab interior, the roof, and basically fixing most of the bits together. So we're getting near the end, which you may be glad to hear. But anyway, thank you for watching, and please watch out for more videos coming soon. Thank you.